whether or not we're...
Yeah, and we can. Yeah. So it says we're going. Hey, I'm just gonna check out the Facebook feed just to see. I never know if it's actually going. Yeah. Awesome. How are you doing tonight, Nahal? Or this morning you?
Yeah, I'm so good, babe. I'm so good, and I'm so excited to be here with you. You have no idea. Like, this has been a long time coming. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been chatting about this for weeks. I'm really excited to have you here.
Yeah.
Hope we get some folks in live. Okay, cool. So we are live. Awesome. All right. Well, the cool thing is, if you're here live, you can always go ahead and tell us you're here live. If you are here on the replay, you give us a hashtag replay just to know that you're here. And I'm going live with Nahal. Nahal, would you like to tell people a little bit about yourself, what you do?
Sure. So my name is Nahal. I'm an integrative yoga therapist in training, and also a yoga teacher. I have a background in control of infectious diseases. I currently live in China. And yeah, that's about it.
How is it right now living in China?
It's good. I mean, at least like the COVID situation here is like non-existent. Like, we didn't really have a lot of cases in my city to begin with. Like, it was like 137 in total. And so, yeah, people walk around here without masks. And yeah, it's like already past that time. But yeah, if we do have a case, I think we'll start freaking out.
Yeah. Y'all were like full lockdown before all of us were, I think. So like we're just still kind of going through it now.
For sure. I think I remember at one point, like we started locking down in January 23rd was the official lockdown date. And I think I personally locked down for much longer than other people did. I think I personally locked myself in for like 80 days. It was like, I think when you guys started your lockdown, like in March, is when we like finished. So yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah. That's so interesting. Well, I'm so excited to have you here. I'm going to dive into some questions. If you're here live, go ahead and say hi to us. And remember, we're going live through something called StreamYard. So if you want to leave comments that we can see on here, just go to streamyard.com/Facebook. And then it just says to give permission, and that's that. Cool. Well, I'm going to dive into some questions. So, Nahal, as you know, my group is for highly sensitive women, and I know you're a highly sensitive person.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you please share some ways or like how this has influenced your life, your work, kind of who you are, your experience in the world?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think something that has really helped frame like what sensitivity means to me is like this is what my intuitive healer shared with me. She was like, sensitivity is basically like an awareness. Like it's like awareness. So sensitivity like basically means that you're more aware of things, or sometimes when you're out in the world, you just have awarenesses that come to you that you're like, sometimes your brain can't even comprehend what that even means, but know like what that is. And so when it comes to my work, like, my gosh, if I wasn't sensitive, I don't think I could do any of the work. Like, yeah, I think like I kind of like almost naturally gravitated towards this, because when I think about my work in public health before, I was like being the therapist for my colleagues, like all the time, like always asking about how they're feeling and things like that. Like way before I got into yoga, like it became a yoga teacher, or like even thought about therapy. Like becoming, I didn't even know what a yoga therapist was until then. So yeah, it's definitely like shapes like absolutely everything that I do now. I think what that means is that whenever I see people, I feel a lot of their like emotions or sadnesses, or I actually like, and it also like with that awareness or with that sensitivity, or it might be just a little bit of Sherlock's health Sherlock Holmes sort of like gimmicks that like you kind of can tell where some people have health issues and stuff like that, like their skin tone or their eye color, or like, you know, like when they have certain scars on their faces, like, or like their what do you call it, their wrinkles on one side of the face is deeper than the other, then you can see where the imbalance of the faces and stuff like that. Yeah,
like,
it's just like one
interesting
thing. Yeah.
Is that traditional Chinese medicine? Where does that come from? Because that sounds like something a naturopath told me that I saw ages ago.
It's actually like a actually this is like, I would say it's a yogic thing, but like when I first learned about it, I think it was from my chiropractor, or it was a Chinese healer. Yeah. But if you look at my face, like, you know, one side of my wrinkles are a little bit deeper than the other. And so this is like where you can actually see where the injury in my body is along my spine. So you can see like one side, which okay, so it's the left side. Yeah. So left side. And it's like usually cross-reference, like opposite sides, right? So it's like my right hip, I had an injury. And so it usually like indents more onto the left side. So it's like when you see like the wrinkles on people's face, my dad has also a very similar, like his is really deep. I actually noticed how deep it was like when he recently shot a video of himself, and I was like, oh my God, like look at that line. I was like, wow, your back's getting like a lot worse now. Stuff like that. So yeah, I think with that, like in terms of when I see people or like be in the world, I'm always like, what's happening with their body?
Yeah, they call that depth of processing, I believe, in like the HSP like literature, all of the nerd stuff. I think it's just like about our depth of being able to process all those details. Obviously, you're aware of like what those details mean. Sorry, I'm taking these off. My glasses are like reflecting. Okay. Yeah,
that's why I had to put my contacts in. Like you wouldn't be able to see my eyes.
No, I was thinking it feels really silly. Well, no, that's really, really interesting. Do you have any like common struggles, just now that we're on this topic of like sensitivity? Are there any ways that you feel like it makes your work harder, like in terms of, do you have issues not taking in your clients' emotions, or because, and I know a lot of folks don't know what yoga therapy is, but we hold space in a very intimate way, often one-on-one. Yeah. Do you want to say more on that?
Yeah. Yes, I can chat forever about this.
It's very intimate. Yeah.
And this is actually something that like a healer, I went to a neuroscience conference, and I was a speaker on a panel there, and there was a Chinese healer in the midst of it, in the crowd, and he was listening. And this was something that, because like I speak Chinese, like usually like it attracts people, and so I could tell that the whole crowd, they were like really paying attention to me. But then afterwards, this healer, and he's blind and he can't hear very well too. So, and he had like a person, his wife was next to him, and like whisper, like telling it into his ear, like the ear that could hear. Yeah. And so I didn't really know what was going on, but she basically took my hand and told me to come, and he wanted to do something. And I didn't know that he was a healer. So I thought they wanted me to do something for him. But no, he was like, Nahal, because you're so open and you radiate love, you also really need to be careful of this, because you know what? This is going to impact your children. Because of your work, because of how much love you are able to take in and receive from other people, that you could easily take this to, if you take it home and you were to take it to your child, your kids are going to be the ones that are impacted. And these are little tiny little bodies. And I don't even have kids. So it's like, and I always knew this was going to be like an issue. So this is like struggle, sensitivity struggle for life, man. This is real. But like, because I'm so aware of it, like I do a lot of practices to try to hone it in, to really focus and not take in so many people's like stuff. Because another thing that another healer was like sharing with me, because this is like an ongoing thing, that they were saying that like when you are so I totally lost. Oh, so like having the sensitivity is like, it's out of compassion that you kind of like take it. So it's not even something that, even if you mentally are aware that you're taking in the person's energy, sometimes you're just like, let me just take it. Like that sounds really hard. Like, let me just eat that for you. And then just like, oh, but I'll like get rid of it. Like, you know, I'll process it like a little faster. And like, but there are other ways of doing this that are much more healthy. That's not one healthy way. I think a healer would go down fast and hard with that. But yeah, I think when it comes to...
if they're only absorbing all the time and not like transmuting and not like cleansing themselves, or however you do that mentally, physically, all the ways. Yeah. Yes.
And I think like one thing that I have learned that has been really helpful is to surrender it to a higher power.
Yeah.
Because that power is going to be much greater than you in doing whatever healing work that you think you're doing or that you think you're like, you know, there to connect or whatever. It's just like to surrender it and to be like, you know what, and to kind of like almost like pass it over. So that's actually like what I picture or imagine is usually like a holy place that I feel absolutely at home and at peace, that I like imagine being at the threshold of like putting my head down and offering the other person's like pain to this higher source. And so like that, I don't always remember that, but that's like usually the thing that's like the major thing that I'm just like, let me just step aside and let this happen.
So for you, like connecting to your higher power, you know, whatever that means to you is part of that process of making sure you're not internalizing everything so strongly. Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I have the same kind of connection.
I think also like when it comes to my own things, like not just like work, when it comes to like my clients or stuff like that, but just even my own issues, I'm like, that's the best way to like deal with it anyway. So it's like, it's the same with your clients. Like if you have a source that you really rely on for like faith or like personal guidance or whatever, hand it over to them. Like what other people might call them also angels or like archangels or like, you know, whatever. I don't really like people have different
like ancestors or I know all kinds of things. Your higher power can mean so many things to so many different people. It could be nature. It's not like only inclusive of like spirituality per se, but
exactly,
totally with you.
With the I definitely bank on my ancestors for sure. 100%. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Well, would you say that, I'm curious, would you say a lot of your students or clients, all the people that you work with are highly sensitive people as well?
So, I wouldn't call them that, but definitely I think the majority of clients that come to me, they suspect that they're highly sensitive or they don't know it. And then they're like, they feel really awful. And then they're like, why am I feeling so awful? I'm like, you're just taking in a lot of things. And that's like, it's a wonderful thing to have that. Like, of course, like with every side of the coin, there's always like the light side and the shadow side, right?
Yeah.
And we always have to like manage the shadow side. But also even the light, I think, can be something that really terrifies people. I think more so the light than the shadow. That's actually one major concept that I teach a lot, or I bring up in my class, is that people are mostly afraid of their light than they are of their darkness. Like people don't have. Well, I don't really.
I'm like, that's intriguing. How are we afraid of our light? And if you're here live, go ahead and say hi. Let us know.
And so one of the I don't really know when it comes to like light. Like usually people. This is actually a quote that I heard from Marianne Williamson, and it really impacted me. And I was just like, I'm taking that and putting that in my course. And every time I talk about it, my students are like, oh my God, you're right. Because people don't have an issue like nitpicking their own like faults. But they do have a difficulty owning saying that I'm a highly sensitive person, because that's the quality of light that I would say. Let's see a comment here.
Let's see who that is. Oh, that's Jackie. Jackie Rosenheim.
Hi, Jackie. Hey,
we love you.
We love you. Another fellow integrative yoga therapist. You got that?
Yes, another one of our people.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm sorry, back to that. I feel like when you talk about being afraid of the light, like I know I hear from a lot of students and clients that like the healing process in general is really intimidating, and they get comfortable. Maybe it's just like you're so comfortable in the place that you're in and the patterns and habits and things that we make as coping mechanisms to live our lives. And so that idea of stepping forward into the mystery of like what that means to be without those things is a little scary. What do you have any advice on that? You know, like how to make that process like a little bit, what do I want to say? A little bit more sustainable, a little bit easier, a little bit more gentle, nourishing. I don't know. There's so many words.
I don't think there's anything that I can say to make it more gentle. Yeah. But there's a perspective that I think is really helpful in understanding that this is actually something that I shared in one of our classes. I don't know if you remember this story. Like I also made like a YouTube video on this. So if people want to look at this like deeper, but it's basically of a study that was done on monks. And what they did was they consented to being zapped with pain. And what they found was that they actually felt more pain than people who did not meditate. So it's like meditation is something as a tool to build awareness, right? So it's like with these awarenesses, with these sensitivities that come up, it's like you're going to feel way more, unfortunately, than other people. But the thing that was different was the recovery time, the time that it would drop back down to like normal. So whereas maybe like a person who didn't meditate before, they would like go up to here in fear, but they would come back down, not all the way. They would go in this half, they would kind of calm down a little bit, but still hold on to the fear. And they would keep going with this. Whereas the monk would be able to like spike up in their anxiety and then like come back down to like normal and like resilience. So that's like what resilience is called. It's like whenever you have like a traumatic event that you're able to recover fast from it. So the thought that I have for highly sensitive people is that because like as we continue to build our awarenesses and our sensitivities, more and more things will come. Yes. And this is a beautiful thing, and it's a wonderful thing. And I think before where I was like, I need to stop learning or I need to stop growing. Now I'm more in the sense that this is actually something that Joseph Page, like one of our teachers, also mentioned, is that you cannot have experienced joy if you do not experience pain. So this spectrum is not like this or like this. It's like this. It moves both ways. If you want to experience more joy, you need to also feel more pain. Yeah. It's like an elastic band. So I just heard this analogy the other day. It's like the area of your clarity or your knowledge widens the parameters of your ignorance. So the more, or you could like see that as like, this is your knowledge is your light and the parameters is your darkness. So the darkness widens more. And also like the analogy of like, when you go towards a light, your shadow becomes larger. Ooh, so whenever I think, that's a big one. That was a huge one for me. It's like the more you become aware, the greater you realize your shadow is. So it's like, as we become more aware, we could realize more and more how awful we are. for me. That's for me.
What would you how would you define shadow, Nahal, for people who like aren't familiar with that concept of like the shadow that we all have and should probably be communing with regularly? We'd be much happier people if you just talk to your shadow, y'all. Talk to it.
Yeah. But that's really it's really scary. It's really scary to talk to your shadow because you don't know what it is. It's like dark and spooky, or like, you know, all those like qualities, but they say there is no darkness. Darkness or shadow doesn't exist. It's just the absence of light. I'm more of that believer, in the sense that it's just light, and anything that is it's kind of like, I would say shadow is like the unknown.
Yeah.
Some people could say it's the evil part of you. Like I would say like those greedy, jealous qualities that sometimes can creep up, and then you're just like, whoa, it's there. Or it could just be the unknown.
I like to think of it like the parts of ourselves that we just don't like to talk about, like those things that are kind of hidden, you know, like I don't necessarily think of them as like evil. I think of them as like my really human side, right? Like when I'm tired and when I'm grumpy and I haven't had enough sleep, which is like a huge problem for me. If I don't sleep, I'm a monster. And then I snap at people that I love. And then I say things I don't. Right. So, I mean, to me, that's my shadow. Hi, shadow. How are you? You know?
Hey. Yeah.
And I think like just admit and talking about it and having like accountability and awareness, like for me, that brings in more joy. But that's just I don't know.
For sure. Yeah, literally, it's that spectrum thing. Like, if the more you deal with your pain, your shadow, your wounds, your trauma, whatever it is, like I would say like a whole bunch of stuff there. The greater peace, love, kindness, joy, open-heartedness, and just ability to feel love and joy in like ways that you've like never, like ecstasy that you've like never, like, you know, like you're just like, I've had enough of joy, like my heart's about to like combust, like that's enough.
But we need the lows to feel those highs. I totally agree with that.
Exactly.
So anyone who's watching, feel free to give us some questions. We're just going to keep going through little conversation and some questions. So if y'all have anything to share, go ahead and talk to us. Talk to us. Sorry.
Or stalk us, you know, hey, go for it.
Yeah. So do you think, so let me think, I'm going through a little my questions.
Go for it.
So let's get into like, okay, so obviously I find it really fascinating that you have a master's in, you know, public health, and it's the control of infectious disease that you studied, right? And how cool that you also decided to study yoga therapy. Given those studies, like how do you feel like that influences your work in yoga therapy? And maybe in general, just like, I have so many questions, but I'm like, how did you get into that? And how did you decide to marry the two? It's so interesting.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to like, let's start one by one.
Yeah. I know. I'm like,
so when I was like really, ever since I was young, there was only one thing I ever wanted to do. One thing. And that was become a physician. That's it. And Western medicine doctor. And this was like, you know, like you look at me, I'm like Persian, ethnically Persian. And this is, of course, something that is very prevalent in my culture. But I had a lot of natural tendencies when I was young, like that I could not move if someone was hurt. Like this is when I would lose my parents. Sorry, I'm reading the comment. I love the spectrum of trauma and resiliency. What are your recommendations on coming back to resiliency with more ease?
That's Jackie again. Awesome question.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good, Jackie. Just bucket loads of compassion is really just like a dunk yourself in compassion. Like dunk it. like sit under a compassion waterfall and just like let it just like take over you. And I think also the thing is like to remember that not to think that we should. Sorry, was there a delay in something? Oh,
I think there's a little delay. Well, maybe just for me. You're talking about compassion.
Yeah. And so I was.
What's your favorite compassion practice? I know there's a lot of. Oh, sorry, we have a lag. I think. Go on.
Yeah. No, a compassion practice. I've actually never heard of that. What is a compassion practice?
Yeah, so there's different compassion. There's different compassion meditations that I've heard of, where basically you just imagine yourself surrounded by, all the love in the world. Maybe there's like the love and kindness meditations as well, where you like send love out to other people that you love and then back into yourself. And I mean, for me personally, I journal. My journal is a big compassion practice for me, because I just get to like spew all of my tough emotions and feelings. And yeah, because for me, like coming back to resiliency with more ease, it's just really helpful for me to, and I recommend this to anybody, but just acknowledging that you are going through it is a big part of it. Just acknowledgement and awareness. And if you're not talking about it to somebody, talking about it to yourself. And if you're having a really, really, really hard time, obviously seek a professional. Sorry.
Professional. Yeah, definitely don't look for a perfectionist. Like that's actually the person you want to stay away from.
A professional, a mental health professional, someone who can help you, any kind of healer, who specializes in these kind of trauma and all that.
I think also, like for me at the moment, something that I'm really striving to remember to practice is non-resistance.
Ooh,
like don't fight the fact that you're having a hard time, because that's why we suffer. We suffer because we're having a hard time. We don't think we should have a hard time. And then we beat ourselves about having a hard time. And then we're like, but we're a yoga therapist, so we should know better. Like, and we know this. So like, why aren't you like, it's just like getting a whip and just like on top of your hurt that someone just stabbed you, you get another bat and you beat yourself with it. That is unnecessary. If you get poked accidentally by just walking on the road of life, shoot, let's just sit there together and just watch it bleed for a bit. Let's just do that. Or like, let's clean up the wound. Let's put a Band-Aid on it. Let's like kiss it, but let's not like go look for a bat or a whip and then be like, why is this happening to me? Like, I think we're always surprised when something awful happens to us, that we're always like, but why is this happening to me? As if like Buddha didn't come a long time ago to tell us that we cannot, like, was it suffering that he said we don't do? Or like,
he said suffering is inevitable. The Buddha was like, suffering is life. You will suffer. Yeah,
exactly. So it was like, Buddha said that a long time ago, guys. Like, we need to get with the program. We really need to like catch up. Like, it's not wrong, or there's nothing that's a mistake in your life if you feel awful, especially during this COVID outbreak is something I want to say. Definitely. Yeah.
Well, let's get to some questions on that. But yeah, I would say mindfulness was the biggest game changer in my life. Obviously, like yoga as well, but like I bring my mindfulness into every part of my life, including my yoga practice. So just like staying in the present moment and present with everything that's fluctuating through our being is such a game changer. So however you can get into mindfulness, get into it.
Get into it, yes.
Into it, honestly. Do yourself a favor.
Yeah.
All right. So feel free to shoot us any other questions, y'all. Let's talk a little bit about COVID. So right. So you largely serve like the caregiver population, right? So nurses, doctors. I know in this group we also have like hospice care, palliative care. And of course mothers. You serve mothers as well, I believe.
Yeah.
And we have like I said, a ton of this caregiver group in the caregiver population in this group, because obviously it's a lot of sensitives.
Shout out to you guys. Namaste to you.
Yeah, shout out to the caregivers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your work, guys. All of you.
Yeah. They're pulling us all along right now. And tell us hello if you're here and you're a caregiver of any sort, and what you do. And as we all know, the caregivers are largely overwhelmed right now, right? They've got a lot on their plates. Is this something you can speak to, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. Like, going back to like this meditation practice, I started meditating when I was working in outbreaks. So this was 2014 outbreak. I was working on Ebola, MERS-CoV, and H7N9. So these three. And it was literally the day that I left was the day that it was declared a public health emergency of international concern, which is like the highest bar of alarm that can happen, like the WHO can like ring, basically. So I was in these meetings with people who were the decision makers of the world. Like, imagine being in the room where all decisions for what's happening right now is being made. I was in there. And I was an intern. And it was I was basically inputting all of the data of anytime someone was sick into the system and writing their symptoms, their temperature, every single person. So imagine, like, I can't even think of the math. Literally, that was one human. That was me doing that crazy. For the beginning part of like Ebola outbreak. I could take about 10 data that I could like input in one by one, you know? But imagine, you see the numbers with COVID. I can't imagine how many interns or how many people, humans, are inputting that information, because every single human being, you see their whole profile of it. You don't see their name, but you see their age, you see their gender, you see their symptoms, you see like notes on like where they started, like what kind of contact they've had on all these things, and you map them out. Every day we need a new map of like where in the world all of these, where it's like spreading, basically. And so that was my job. And then it became like, then 5 other people were hired to do my job because it was like too overwhelming. And that's what happens with outbreaks. And I really was struggling with my job. Yeah. Imagine, like, I had no awareness of being sensitive then. Okay, this was like way beyond that. I was like taking in all these things. So I was in this room, and when I started meditating, it was like an absolute must. I could not go back to work without meditating first. It was more just like a absolute coping mechanism. But because I started meditating and I was in these rooms with people who were not meditating and they were exhausted. Let me tell you, in these rooms, like, they're all physicians. They're all PhD. They all hold PhDs. They all have very high positions. They're all politically very well connected. Everyone is super smart. But like, someone like my boss was on 14 cups of espresso a day, you know?
Oh my goodness.
And they were not even present. They were not present. And so when I started meditating, I started like this whole new world started opening up to me. And so I would go into these rooms and I would just be like, oh my God, no one in this room is awake. I would be like, and it's not that they're bad people or that they're not trained. They're just tired. They're just tired as hell. And their biology is just, and they're not eating food that nourishes their body, mind, and spirit. Let's not even talk about whether or not they think they have spirits here. Okay, like that's like a whole other issue here. You know, like, so it was just, so since then, it was always on my mind that like, I really need to work with people who are very high up decision makers and help basically give them tools to be able to function and do their job well, and also for them not to get exhausted. Like, because, you know, sometimes because you're so respected, because you're so cool, because you're so educated, people think you're kind of like good to go.
That's
it's like
fair.
If you ask them, how are you? It's as if you like are throwing all their education away. But it's like, no, you're just asking the human person how they are doing. And this is something that like doctors or like caregivers, they're so busy taking care of other people that they don't even have the time to think of themselves. That's really what it is about. So when I am usually thinking about things, I'm always thinking about who's the person getting most neglected in the room. And to me, that's always the healthcare workers, because all they're doing is providing for other people.
How interesting.
So yeah.
Yeah, and that's still going on like right now. That's really relevant to kind of life at the moment. Yeah, like I said, we have a ton of caregivers in this group. So like you're saying that basically you kind of pivoted your work to helping them, this caregiver population in general, learning how to relax, how to take care of themselves amidst all the craziness. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So that was in like 2014, where I was like in the midst of an outbreak. That's where my meditation journey started. But this outbreak, it was a little interesting because I had already done my yoga teacher training and my yoga therapy training. And then it was just like go time. It's like, baby cakes, this is your time to shine and like merge the two. This is where you got to merge.
I love that.
And I was like, in the midst of myself going through my own journey, I was like struggling, like trying to like think of, okay, how can I serve other people? How can I do all these things? This is like literally healthcare provider mentality right here. You know, you're drowning, but you're trying to think of saving someone else's like, you know, mental health or body or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the things that I wanted to think about. So the good thing that this whole public health background has kind of given me when it comes to like yoga therapy is I'm always thinking about populations, and I'm always thinking about the greatest impact of what I can do to help the most number of people. And I've always been interested in the thing that affects us all, in the thing that affects literally absolutely everyone, not just like one part of the world or another part of the world, or like, you know, a certain group of people or a certain subset of people, but it's like everyone, every human. And so when I was thinking about this, is like, okay, physical yoga postures is not actually something that I teach even in my private practice to everyone. But I do think breath is something more accessible. And something for me, I was thinking a lot about what can I do to actually help healthcare providers mentally under their PPE. So there was like, at least during the Ebola outbreak, one of the things that we had to often deal with is like the doctors that we would send into the field, they would literally need oral rehydration from all the PPE that they would wear. And you know, the PPE for the personal protective equipment that is needed for Ebola is so much more intense, and it's so suffocating that they become dehydrated. They start sweating so much, they become dehydrated. And that after they take it off, the doctors need to receive oral rehydration, basically take what the patients are and just like shove it in their own mouth, you know, like in a separate room, of course. But that was something that was really a struggle. So it is not comfortable for healthcare providers to be wearing all of these things. And I knew that I needed to create something. This is where the public health and yoga merged together. Because you know how yoga, we have a lot of like breath techniques that we use our hands on our face, like nadi shodhana, like alternate nostril breathing. You know, we move our hands, like hands are touching the face. This is like public health, no. Like don't touch your hands to your face at all. And you can't do that under a mask or PPE. So no. So I was thinking of like, okay, how do we think of, how can I teach like these breath practices that will not suffocate you under a mask, that will not use your hands, and that even surgeons can use when they have like 17, 15-hour long surgeries that they're doing. You know, like So it was like, I was just thinking like hands-free basically, and just low maintenance breathing, but very effective in bringing your mind back. Because something that people don't often know is that in order to make good decisions or decision making or just creative solutions, which a lot of us need this faculty going, especially during the COVID outbreak, because there's so much uncertainty and things like that, is that our bodies need to be in a parasympathetic state. It needs to be in the calm, relaxed state to think of solutions. They can't think of solutions. We can't think of solutions in a stressed state, which a majority of us are in 99% of the time. So it's like, we're really not using our creative faculties to even problem solve about this pandemic, about like the chaos that is happening around us. So this is what I love about the body, is that the body is a magical, beautiful system that can heal itself, but it needs to be in that parasympathetic phase to do its magic. It can't do it when it's stressed, when it thinks that there's imminent issues, like when we're facing it. So
right.
yeah.
So how do you describe the parasympathetic system, just so people who don't know about the autonomic nervous system? I imagine most people do if they're in this group, since it's like, you know, I predominantly talk about like wellness and yoga, but talk about that a little.
So the parasympathetic nervous system is a part of our nervous system. It's like the nerves in our body, right?
Yeah.
And so we have an automatic nervous system, and we also have a central nervous system. Like, well, the central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord. And then we have the peripheral nervous system, which is like all the nerves going out to all of the organs and the rest of the parts of your body.
Yeah.
In the peripheral nervous system, there is the automatic nervous system. So it's like basically the autonomic nervous system governs your digestion. When you forget to breathe, like what we're doing now, we're not thinking of our breath in particular, but our lungs are happening with us. So the lungs are interesting that it's connected both. We have the conscious side of it and the unconscious side. When we forget, it still keeps on going, which is beautiful. There's no other system in the body that does that. The heart is a part of the organ systems that always beats. It never stops, right? And
yes.
So, and like all of these parts of our body, basically, there's like a green light zone and like a red light zone. Green, we're safe. We can go. We can digest. We can sleep. We can meditate. We can focus. We can think of creative solutions. When it's the red light zone, it means that we're facing like a tiger, a saber-toothed tiger, or like a presentation, or us doing this talk. It could be like that in the beginning, you know, or like, so things like that. It's like basically stressful situations. Mm-hmm. It's like when the body gets a little tense, and literally blood like shunts from your heart to your limbs, your arms and your legs, so that it can start running faster. And also, you know, like when we think of the natural response, that whenever we get scared, we think of the saying like, I want to shit in my pants, or like I want to poop. That basically is like a natural, it's like a natural biological system. It's like the reason why you do that is to let go of more weight so that you can run faster.
Oh, so, I didn't actually know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So blood is like basically in different areas of your body when it comes to the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So when you're stressed, your blood is in your fingertips and your toes to run, your muscles. Think of running. But then when you're calm, all the blood starts going to your central part of your body. So your heart, your digestion, your stomach, like that central region to like, so it doesn't have to go through a whole part of your body to like take blood all the way up and all the way down. So yeah. So essentially when it comes to like the nervous system, our inhale breath is connected with our sympathetic nervous system. And our exhale breath is connected to our parasympathetic nervous system. So the in-breath and the exhale are basically the balance of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. And Wonderful. This is the beauty of it. So when we run, we notice that we take more inhales. Inhale, 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 inhale. And when we're relaxed or we're digesting, sometimes we can like notice this, that our exhales get longer.
Yeah.
Throughout the day. So it's like basically the balance of your in-breath and your exhale is basically going to govern your life. Is going to determine whether or not you're in balance. If you're inhaling too much, you're stressed. If you're exhaling too much, you're like sleeping or like really like knocked out, you know, like, or like unconscious. You're not alert. You're not like the medium.
So I think of it like, and by the way, I know ages ago, Courtney left us a comment, totally relate to that. Thanks for commenting, Courtney. If you have any questions, let us know. Obviously happy to answer anything. I like to think of like when I'm stressed, I know that it's all here. Do you know what I mean? Like the breath just like seems to be trapped in this chest region. You know what I mean? Like to me, that's like one of those biggest signs. And then I'm thinking about it in terms of like, you're talking about like how, I mean, basically it feels like just from just being on the internet, the world is just kind of stressed right now. You know, like there's just so much compounding and people are just like right on the edge of a panic attack or an anxiety episode, or just like not sleeping well. Insomnia is prevalent because everyone's just kind of living in this fearful state.
Huge.
So what you're saying basically is working with the breath is our best and easiest and when you want to say most timeless tool.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, I think, you know, like during our yoga teacher training, this is like the most, one of the most memorable stories that I have of Joseph LePage is that, remember like in the beginning, the first night when we all got together and we were introducing ourselves, and I don't know about you, but I was super nervous, like seeing like that I had 5 teachers like all lined up in front of me for different modules and different topics and things like that. Yeah. And Joseph was there. He was our main teacher, our main instructor, and he was talking. And then he said, like, get with like 7 or 8 people around you and introduce yourselves. And he gave us questions to discuss. And I can't remember what question it was that I was in, but it was like the 3rd question. I remember that he came to our group, he sat down, he asked the question. Oh, the question was, what in your yoga practice have you been learning that it just continues to amaze you?
Oh, juicy.
And when we were there, he like came to it. He came to our group. None of us had said anything yet. So it was a new group. Like we hadn't even talked to each other yet. So we didn't know each other. And Joseph asked the question and immediately answers it. And I'm here watching him like a hawk. I'm just like really trying to be like, you know, if this guy is like serious, and he's like kind of hard to read, right? So and Joseph was like saying, you know what I find to be the thing that I learned the most, that I've been learning the most? He's like, the breath. I find the breath that no matter how much you learn, there's always something new to be learned from it. Always. Yeah. Like the physical body, you know its parameters. Like this is the bone, this is the structure, this is how far your limbs can go. You bend it back and forward like as like really, you get really flexible. Then you get to a point where you have an end.
Yeah.
The breath is something that you do not have an end practice to.
That's so interesting.
And so that to me was, I was looking at this guy being like, what is his practice? Like, what does he do now that he's like, whatever, he's done a lot of like stuff. And, you know, like, I'm like, what does he think? And the fact that he said the breath, and the breath pranayama practice is the 4th limb of the 8 limbs of Ashtanga yoga. It's the 8 steps of enlightenment. The physical asanas it's the 3rd practice. So breath practice is higher than the physical practice.
Because you work through the limbs. So the physical practice gets you ready to work with the breath, in theory. Yeah, that's really fascinating. Yeah.
And I didn't really understand that in practice. Because when I think about it, it's like a good yoga practitioner is someone who does their physical yoga postures first with practicing breath awareness. And then you do a breath awareness practice in the beginning of your practice so that you kind of get anchored in your breath. And then when you're doing your physical practice, you breathe into the shadows, or we say the dark corners of your body, parts of your body. So it's like you're getting like a torch and you're like shining your light on the dark parts of your body. Like the webs, the cobwebs, like the spider webs of your body.
With the breath.
Yeah. And so, or like, just like even with physical movement, but with the breath, but like, as I get deeper into my practice, I realize that I can't breathe without first doing physical yoga postures to open up my body, to then be able to direct life force energy where I want it to go.
I can totally relate to that as well.
That is something that I think, like, I only understood that through like deeper practice, like what that really means, or why it's the 4th step of enlightenment is pranayama, like guiding, directing life force energy. Yeah.
I will be right. I'm so sorry. 1 second. I have to plug my computer in. This will be like a hot second.
All good. All good. I'll stand here. Model for you guys. If you guys have any questions for us, please leave it for us. Yeah, in the comments below. Would be great to hear what you guys do and where you guys are, and if there are any healthcare workers out there, shout out to you guys. Hope you guys are doing well and you're keeping up with it.
Live or replay. It's totally.
Yes. I'm loving this, Jess, like reminding people that the hashtag replay, like if you're watching this on the replay, please do comment, because we are going to read it and we're going to want to know what you have to say about it, and whether or not any of this was any help to you. Yeah.
Of course it is. Yeah. So basically, okay, back to our conversation, because it is super relevant right now, just about like, we're talking about the perspective of well-being of caregivers during the pandemic. So what have you were saying that you've kind of cooked up something specifically for this demographic during this time. Yes. And can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I at least didn't have ever when it came to like learning about the breath is like a systematic way of learning how to breathe. And I think, I mean, in yoga practices, like in yoga classes, we learn how 1 or 2 breaths and we use it here or there in the physical yoga practices. But there isn't one, like, what if you can't really do one? Or what if one is really difficult for you? I don't know for you, but like there were many breath practices that made me sick, like nauseous. And I was like literally about to vomit. And this had to do with the impurities of my body now that I'm learning. And I really had to, it's like you could really hurt yourself with a breath practice. Like, don't like.
Well, to me, I would relate it to like a cleanse. You know how like people push all those cleanses on people, like, yes. Like just drinking lemon and cayenne pepper and water for like days. And yes. It's like, dude, if your body is full of toxins, it's so aggressive. It's such a shock to the system. And I've met so many people who were adversely affected by that. Like they literally got sick, because it's like you go from this to this. And like, that's just, so my point being, I feel like with anything, it's all about like small learning, like a base foundation, like first just awareness of breath, right? Like
yes.
You don't have to dive into fire breath, breath of fire.
So I really wanted to create like a breath program that was really accessible to people, to all kinds of people, whether or not you were even practicing yoga. We all breathe. We all need to learn how to breathe better.
Yeah.
And like, if you once one goes into it, like you can realize like how easy it is to like mess up the breath. How breathing improperly can really affect your sleep, affect your rest, affect your mood, affect your health. Like, oh my gosh, like everything. So I created this 12-week pure breath program where I run people through every week. I teach about 10 breath techniques, simple ones. All these, at least the first level of the pure breath program, is going to be really accessible to like absolutely everyone. It's even like safe for all pregnancies. I made sure of that the first level is literally any human being can do it.
That's really awesome.
So yeah, and so I really wanted to take people through it, like 12 weeks of breath practice, and that every week we just focus on one breath practice and really honing in on that, and then slowly building on top of that. I think I this is something that I really want to do like more research on, like academic research on, because I'm always thinking about the public and like masses of people's health at the same time.
Yeah.
I really think that like, I think one thing that this COVID outbreak has really nailed in his history of outbreaks is the importance of the human being as more than just a body, because and that their mind and their mental sanity is something that we really need to take care of.
Yes.
Like, yes. I mean, that's not something that in any previous outbreak we have really understood, the mental side. And this is something that like I've always been advocating, like when it comes to public health work, and people haven't really understood like this point. I'm actually even talking about the spiritual aspects of things when it comes to outbreaks, but getting to the mental layer first is the next step. But then ultimately, it's the soul aspect of things that's really going to connect us all when it comes to like an outbreak like this. So because the breath and the soul and the spirit have this beautiful relation, that even though if you're not even thinking about the soul or the breath or anything like that, somehow it will connect you to something. It will help you experience something that's so much greater than yourself or that you've ever known. And it'll take you to physical, just biological states where it's so calm. It like breaks my heart when people come to my yoga classes and they say that I've never relaxed this much before. And I'm like, my God, that was just like in my life. Sorry, they said in my life. I've never in my life been so relaxed. And I was like, really? Like, not even when you were like young and like playing? It's like, no. Because like literally they were born in traumatic circumstances, in stress. And so when they come, like they don't even know what calm or good feelings feel like in the body. Or that when you get it, then you're like, oh, this is a weird feeling. This is maybe too good. Like, I'm not worthy of keeping this feeling. So I'm going to go
do something stressful.
Or do something stressful. Or just like, let me just go into a marketplace, and just like mess up my my neurons, my nervous system.
Gossip is a really good example. I've been thinking about gossip a lot lately.
Oh, yeah. That's huge.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. That's like, I mean, talk about like low vibes. It's just like tricky because it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I often am always wondering, I'm like, is this gossip I'm hearing? Or is it, you just, it's tough. Anyway, I'll laugh for another day. So talking about your pure breath program, I just want to know, like, is there a very simple, like, what would be, do you have an example of one of your really easy, accessible breathing practices, one of your pranayamas?
Yeah. I have one that I really would like to teach everyone that is super also beneficial for like COVID or like patients, or even just in general, making sure that your nasal cavity is clear of mucus. And this practice in particular helps the drainage of mucus, like it moves the cilia in your nose. Like it's like these hair-like structures in your nose. And what it does, it activates this cilia so that it pushes mucus back faster.
Oh.
And so let's say, for instance, by chance, God willing, like knock on wood, like we don't have this happen to us, that we contract the virus, or it goes into our mucus, into our nose and into the mucus layers, that if we drain, studies have not been shown about this, but if you drain the mucus containing the virus into the stomach where there's acid, it kind of like neutralizes it in a sense. And so, but it's not like 100%. So this is just like protective measures to keep your nose free from mucus and clear and breathing through your nose. So the other thing is that when we are wearing our mask, one thing that we don't get enough of is enough oxygen, or like we don't feel like we are getting breath through our masks, right? And sometimes what we do to get more air is we open our mouth to breathe through our mouth so that there's more, this faster air going into our body. But then the mouth doesn't have any of the filtration, doesn't have nasal hair. It can't condition the air. It doesn't warm the air. So that all of these things need to kind of like happen in order for it to go down smoothly to our lungs, but then into the rest of our body and give it life, give it the oxygen and life force that it needs. So to breathe through your nose is so important, but it's hard to do that with the breath, with the mask on. So basically, and also when you're breathing through your mouth, you lose a lot of water. You lose like 72% of water. So you get more thirsty. Oh, so then you take off your mask and then you drink more water. Yeah. And so, and also for people who are infected with COVID, when they exhale, if they're breathing through their nose, inhale and exhaling, then they can stop transmission like faster. But if they're breathing through their mouth, they're letting all that COVID particles out into the air. And so even if you're like in a circumstance where you're wearing a mask or whatnot, always 100% of the time breathe through your nose. So one of the practices that I wanted to teach everyone is the humming breath. So the humming breath is beautiful in that it releases 6 times of nasal nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is just this molecule. Wait, my battery is like, let me plug my computer in. Yeah, you're good. It's plugged in, but it's just, it got a little wonky.
No, it's cool. We're just talking about breathing through the nose and the mucus.
And mucus stuff. So yeah. So the humming breath, it releases like 6 times of nasal nitric oxide, and nitric oxide is a vasodilator, which means that it opens up the blood vessels for more blood flow. More blood flow in general in the body is wonderful. They say that pain, the result of pain in Chinese medicine, this has a lot to do with the lack of blood flow in parts of the bodies. So to vasodilate anything in the body is a good thing to like just allow for the blood to just give its oxygen to the rest of the body. So this breath practice is basically super simple. Just put your feet flat on the ground. Posture is always important. Spine straight, shoulders, heart, and your hips in one line. So it's usually at this point I was leaning forward and now I am moving back. And what you want to do is just like chill out, focus on your inhale and focus on your exhale. Really center yourself in this moment. And then what you want to do is take an in-breath in through your nose. And then on the exhale, just hum. We can do this like a couple times. So let's take an inhale in. And then exhale. And if you have any sort of symptom like underlying conditions like hypertension in particular, usually people get a little dizzy doing this practice. Do it very, very slowly, like slow it down. Like right now, just because of demonstration purposes, like we sped it up a little bit, but do it even slower. So take the in-breath that you want to take in, you want to really, really, really slowly like take it up. And then the hum, you don't want to vibrate so much. You want to vibrate less. Sometimes you can make it vibrate like really intensely, but like try a gentle, like purr almost. It doesn't have to be loud.
There's a lot of benefits to it too. You know, like it's good for vagal tone, massages the vagus nerve. It extends the exhale, which we were talking about, is really good for, you know, getting back into your parasympathetic rest, digest, calmness.
Yes.
Yeah. Great breath. Thanks, Nahal.
Yeah. You're welcome.
So how much time do you have? How are you feeling?
I got all day for you, baby.
I was going to say, we could, if you would like to get to your little story, we could. So, because obviously, like, we're talking about the breath, we're talking about this energy body, and I know we've explored this a bit in the group. And again, just shout out to everyone who's here on the replay or live. Let us know if you have questions. So we talk about the energy body, and I know I've been talking about, we're about to dive into a nice slow study of our chakras here in the group, the 7 main ones. And we're not going to be talking about those today, obviously. We're talking about other things, but Nahal would like what was I saying? You were going to share something with the group to help them kind of prepare themselves in like nervous system and bodily, kind of to help them sustain and prepare for the depth of this work. Is that correct? Yeah.
So I think with like chakra work in general, I'm going to speak to the people here, is really intense, guys. It's like #real talk. It's the best work you'll ever do in your life. Like there's nothing I love more in this world than chakras. And chakras, I would say, is one of those things that I could learn so much about, and it'll still be still be deep for me. And the chakras are basically, in yoga, like chakra means wheel. It means like kind of like a spinning wheel of energy clusters.
Yeah.
There's about 114 nadis in the body. Nadis are what's a fancy way of saying energy center points, and where energy like projects out, essentially. And the chakras are a conglomerate of 7 energy centers along the spine that kind of conglomerate all these 114 to 7 major centers. And these 7 major centers are like really amazing in that they kind of direct and affect different parts of your life. So let's say, for instance, the root chakra affects your family, money, survival skills. Mm-hmm. And then the second chakra, where all your reproductive organs are, affects your romance, your love life, your creativity of thought, mind, matter, a human life. Literally, that's where the baby is born. And also for a man, it's the same. That's actually where the testes originate from. It's that same like area of the body, and then it drops down and out from the body. But the central energy point is the second energy chakra. And so I'm not going to go into all of them because that's going to be Jess's beautiful work. But what I wanted to share with everyone is a simple short story, a timeless story that I share in all of my workshops. And this story is actually based off of a poem from a Persian poet whose name is Fararuddin Attar. And this poem's title is called The Conference of Birds. Many of you might have already heard of this before. And if you have, please do let me know in the comments below and like share any details that you know of this story so that so it can enrich it. But I just wanted to go over a very simple one, just a simple summary of it. And it's basically, it was written in 1777. Sorry, 1177 AD. So this is an old poem. So whenever I think about like when we have works that are that old, that I'm like, it should have died. Like that would have been buried, you know, but it wasn't. And this is the reason why. This is like really why it's like a timeless story. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I know of it is actually not because of its poem. I actually know of it because of its 2.0 version of it. Because 100 years ago, when questions were allowed to be asked to prophets, this is something that people don't know, that actually in all of religious dispensation, questions were never allowed to be asked to the prophets. And this was really because, my understanding is that it's because the people of the time were not educated people, so that any questions that would be asked, it was really out of ignorance and not out of intelligence. Whereas 100 years ago, where the messenger of God, Baha'u'llah, came, mm-hmm. The people that were surrounding him were like scholars and visors, and they were very intellectual people. And for the first time ever, questions were allowed. And because this question was allowed, somebody had brought Fararuddin's poem of The Conference of Birds, brought it to his presence and said, is there any validity of this? And then he wrote The Seven Valleys, which is my absolute favorite book. And I will make sure to leave you a quote. You can find it online for free. And I will make sure that in the links down below, that will be ready for you. It's actually quite a short story. You can read it within a day. I've read it countless times. Like I can't even count. I stopped counting how many times I've read this. But anyways, today I'm going to share a summary of the poem, of what the poem is. And it's really just the story of like basically there was a conference of birds, of different types of birds, of like the peacock, of like the flamingo, of the nightingale, of the hoopoe, like they all gathered together. And because they did not have a sovereign, the hoopoe suggested, let's go find our king. Let's go find our like leaders so that we can be governed, essentially. And so the hoopoe suggested that they're in nearby, like I've heard of this Simorgh. Simorgh in Farsi means the phoenix. And a phoenix, you know, as we know, it's like a mythical creature, right? And so the hoopoe is like, let's go and find the Simorgh, because only the Simorgh could be worthy enough to like rule over all of us. And so, and the hoopoe has been on this journey before to go find the Simorgh. And he was describing the journey to all of the birds and said that we all need to go and find him. But on this journey, we're going to go through 7 valleys or 7 cities. There's different variations of this story, of what it is. And I wanted to ask Jess if you could actually read us what these 7 valleys are.
Yes. One is Valley of the Quest, where the wayfarer begins by casting aside all dogma, belief, and unbelief. Should I proceed?
Please.
2. The second one is the Valley of Love, where reason is abandoned for the sake of love. The third is the Valley of Knowledge, where worldly knowledge becomes utterly useless. The fourth is the Valley of Detachment, where all desires and attachment to the world are given up. Here, what is assumed to be reality vanishes. The 5th, the Valley of Unity, where the wayfarer realizes that everything is connected and that the beloved is beyond everything, including harmony, multiplicity, and eternity. The 6th is the Valley of Wonderment, where, entranced by the beauty of the beloved, the wayfarer becomes perplexed and, steeped in awe, finds that he or she has never known or understood anything. And the 7th is the Valley of Poverty and Annihilation, where the self disappears into the universe and the wayfarer becomes timeless, existing in both the past and the future. Ooh.
So the Hoopu goes and he tells everyone, I don't know, do you have a picture of the Hoopu by any chance? If you can put it up as I'm like continuing this.
How do you
the Hoopu Bird is so beautiful.
Oh, I found it.
Hoopoe. Yeah. And so the Hoopu Bird is like telling this story, and he's telling everyone like the different valleys that they need to go to. And by the sheer mention of this, some of the birds like drop dead and they faint and they're like, oh my God, this journey is too intense. And then others start asking questions and having objections, but like, I don't want to go, or like, why do we have to go? Or like, how are you sure that they're there, or whatever, all the myriad of excuses that they could think of. But in the end, about 1,000 birds travel along with the Hoopu to go. So this is the Hoopu Bird. Look how beautiful it is. Like, look at the crown that it has on its head. And there's so many. I really encourage you guys to go look up some of the illustrations of the Conference of Birds, because it's really gorgeous. But essentially, like, the wings are black and white, and it has this like crown and a beautiful long beak. So the Hoopu Bird is wonderful in that it finds a house in the tree. It doesn't build a nest. It also forages on the ground. So it's a bird that you'll find on the ground, pecking on the ground, finding worms and like different things. And this is like a quality of the bird of the Hoopu, is that it can be both earthly and heavenly at the same time. It transgresses through this like seamlessly.
That's so cool.
So when in every single valley that Jess mentioned, at some point, some of the birds get stuck in those valleys. Some of them, they go to the Valley of Quest or the Valley of Search, and then they don't go any further along with the Hoopu. And then some of them, out of illness, out of thirst, out of dehydration, or out of different reasons, various reasons, they all drop out in the different valleys. And when they get to the 7th valley, the Valley of, what was it, Jess?
The 7th is the Valley of Poverty and Annihilation.
Annihilation. In the 7 valleys, it's called the Valley of Absolute Nothingness and Poverty. And when they get to the 7th valley, they go through this like tumultuous journey, and only 30 birds make it to the last city, the last valley. And when they get to the last valley, all they see is one thing, and it is a mirror. And they look around and they see that there's actually no Seymour. And Seymour is a play on words in Farsi. Si means 30. Mor means bird. So Seymour means 30 birds. So at the end of the 7th valley, you have the mirror with the reflection of the 30 birds. So really what they were looking for was themselves the entire time. So this sort of story is kind of like a similitude to how we live life. Is that you can be living life and you can learn about the chakras and all the various different things about the family, about blood, about love, about other, and learning how to express yourself and things like that. But the ultimate journey of this life is really to see the end in the beginning, is to basically see that the end goal is always for us to learn about ourselves. And so if the focus is always about, when you're going into the journey of learning about the chakras, which in my humble understanding is like as if you were trekking the 7 valleys. The valleys of life, the valleys are not the mountains. They are not the peaks of our life. They are the valleys. They are the hard things that we have to overcome. Mm-hmm. So by definition, they are hard. By definition, they are a valley. They are the downside of it. This is the dark side of it, to come up, to go to the mountain. And so ultimately what I wanted to share with everyone is really this story, so that you could have in your back pocket to remember that whatever you learn about the 7 chakras, or the chakras beyond that, is to really remember ultimately our journey in this life is to really discover ourselves. Whether that means it's the likeness of God within us, our own soul, our own spirit, talking to ourselves, just having a conversation, connecting with our intuition, whatever that means, is that these 7 valleys, journeys that you're going to, that are going to be different, and they all represent a human fault, is that we need to kind of overcome them in order to get to the valley of absolute poverty and utter nothingness, which is what some people can call nirvana or enlightenment, or basically reaching your beloved or being with a friend. Oh, there's many different Persian poems that like talk about the beloved and the friend. And yeah,
I like that. I like that way of putting it, the beloved or a friend. That's nice. Because I know, like, I don't really personally love the term God anymore, because I was raised in, a certain way. So it just feels a little complicated for me, just because, like some of us, it never felt like there was a man in the sky watching me. You know what I mean? So I really like thinking of it as kind of more of a presence, more of, yeah, less of a gendered, weird, jealous being, more of a friend. That's what I'm trying to say. That's, yes. Yeah. But everyone has their own version. And that's
sure.
Okay. But I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me share it with your audience. Yeah,
of course. So basically, like, this work is super deep and there are highs and lows, but you have to go through the lows to get to that mountain peak. I really like that. So Absolutely. You have shared so much with us. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we kind of wrap it up? Or any other final questions? I don't think anyone's here live at the moment, but.
Oh, I can't think of anything. I was actually thinking that was like a great end to our session. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. So how can anyone in this group reach you and your work? I know I posted your website in a banner, and we can definitely post some stuff in the comments. But
cool. Yeah, there was some blogs that I wanted to share with your audience. Like, I think. Also, something that I did want to the last thing I wanted to share was that I recently opened up my own membership site, and it was like only 3 weeks ago, and I've already closed the founding members like discount. But what I really wanted to do is that, because you're my homegirl, I wanted to open it up to your audience, is that what I offered is that I have a monthly membership, and it's usually costs like $75 US. But for your members, I wanted to offer the founding member price, which is $25 US. And I'm only offering that for like 24 hours because I technically was supposed to end it, but I did want to offer it again to you guys. So I really hope you guys find that helpful. And what you will have offered during the next 2 months is the live recordings of actually the Pure Breath program. So if you manage to get on the founding membership, then you'll also get the Pure Breath program. But yeah, Like that's like a cheaper way to get the Pure Breath program.
Yeah. And if people want to contact you, can they just message you? Are you open to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Yogi Avec Moi at gmail.com is my contact. So feel free to send me any questions that you like, that any comments that you have. You're also welcome to message me on Instagram, but email is definitely the best. And I also have like a Facebook page. I also did want to let your audience know that I'm still in the midst of finishing up one of my projects called the Bicentenary Meditation Project, where I'm offered like 365 free meditations, and you can find it on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple iTunes. And so there's about 21 languages of meditations that are on there. And some of them are quotes, actually meditations on sacred writings that have been written by Baha'u'llah, like the same author of the Seven Valleys. So that's something that maybe you can be excited and look into. It's on the hidden words. It's kind of like similar to the Yoga Sutras in the sense that there's short beads of writings that we can meditate on and focus our attention on. So yeah, I did want to let everyone know that free resource is there. So if anyone did want to start a meditation practice and doesn't already have one, or just wants to expand their resources, that's also there for you guys.
Where would they find that? I mean, you can always post it, but I can put it here too if you like.
So on YouTube, on Yoga Avec Moi's channel, it's a playlist called the Bicentenary Meditation Project. And you can also find it on Spotify. By typing in Bicentenary Meditation Project, and on Apple iTunes. I heard actually it doesn't work in the States. I think it's in Canada only, but it looks the best on Spotify. Actually, you can see all the individual pictures because each meditation has this individual unique photo too, because we've had like volunteers contribute from all around the world, and they actually donated their photographs for the cover art of the meditations. So that's like, and on Apple iTunes you can't see it, but that's definitely what I would be listening to if I was listening to it. But like YouTube is also like very, very easy as well.
Perfect. And your name on YouTube is just Yoga Avec Moi?
Yoga Avec Moi with 4 Chinese characters on it. You probably won't be able to look up the 4 Chinese characters. But usually when you search on it, it's like the 3rd or 4th thing down. So yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. I guess we'll wrap it up.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks guys for your comments and your thoughts. I really appreciated that. It was a great question, Jackie. Yeah.
Yeah, and always, y'all, leave your questions. We'll answer them later. Much love. I'm going to end it here. Bye.
Bye.